Hello fellow Bibliowiles, thank you for joining me. Liz and I decided that we wanted our first set of videos to commemorate World War I. So we're going to be dealing with literature that is either about, written during, or somehow focused on World War I. In order to really embrace this, I thought we would have to start with the quintessential World War I book, All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Remarque. This is a beautiful, beautiful book that I read for the first time when I was in high school, which explains the horrible cover that I have. Why would they ever choose that color? I don't know. I also went to my local library to see if they had a different version. This is the one they had. Little bit of a better cover, but I'm still not loving it. I don't know why we can't get a decent All Quiet on the Western Front in Tyler, Texas, but we can't seem to. But the text is just as excellent. I am using the Wien translation because that's the only one I could find here in Tyler, Texas. And when I read it in 11th grade, it really made an impression on me. Growing up in Texas, we were always surrounded by the love of a fight. Almost all of my friends went hunting every single weekend. People would get into fights and it was lauded as like some sort of awesome, wow, we're men. Can't we, beat each other up and be great and stuff? And I even thought growing up that war was this glorious thing, and I used to be sad that I couldn't be a guy to go fight in battle, which of course I could as a girl, but somehow that didn't occur to me. And I was, always thinking that war was this glorious thing. Then, when I read All Quiet on the Western Front, it was the first anti-war book that I read, and really that affected me. I was so startled and stunned about what these boys had to go through. It moved me in a way that's really hard to put into words. I'm going to start by reading a little selection from one of the first chapters of All Quiet on the Western Front. This is something that really gets at what I felt reading it in 11th grade. The narrator is remembering back on his teacher who encouraged him and his friends to join up to fight for the Germans. And he's thinking back on why they started, why are they even here in these stupid trenches fighting this war? And this is what he has to say, and it really is powerful, I think. The idea of authority which they represented was associated in our minds with a greater insight and a more humane wisdom. But the first death we saw shattered this belief. We had to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted than theirs. They surpassed us only in phrases and in cleverness. The first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it, the world as they had taught it to us broke in pieces. This was important for me, and I think for most people who read this book, because we believe what our teachers tell us a lot of times, especially when we're young. We don't maybe care even to challenge what they teach us. And if we think they're smarter than us, we don't even think to challenge it. And he and his friends went off to fight this war because their teacher had said, just like Wilfred Owen wrote, it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. When they get there, they see that that is not at all true. Death in this war is neither sweet nor fitting. It's a bitter, bitter, ugly thing. And this book brings that home beautifully. It's sort of slow, perhaps, and I don't think that everyone is going to love it. The build is sort of gradual, but if you're interested at all in anti-war literature, this would be a great book to read. The way you see the narrator express himself and his interactions with his friends is so moving. This is different than a lot of the literature that was popular about wars at the time and even a little after it, because most of those were written by officers, and these officers got to kind of, stand above the fray. They commanded what was going to happen. They chose when to fight and when not to fight. This is a book very much about the common soldier who has to just sit and wait and do what his officer tells him. This was especially difficult in World War I when you're stuck in those disgusting trenches. Trenches where water would flood through and make them muddy and they can never really be dry. Or where you might find a rat and instead of being disgusted, you'd be excited because it meant your next meal. And this is the horror that we see from the narrator's eyes. I also rewatched All Quiet on the Western Front. Got this from my local library. I'd recommend you check and see if yours has it. It's a movie that was made in 1930, and it is incredibly beautiful. They've added a few scenes, like, for example, instead of starting in the trenches as the book does, the movie begins with them at their school and the schoolmaster sort of rallying them together, making them want to go join and fight. But both of them deal with the anti-war material in the same way. It doesn't come across like a sledgehammer or like an annoyingly didactic tale. Instead, it's sort of this beautiful refrain that is on the outskirts of the novel the whole time, and you feel it every time one of his friends dies, up until the very last moment. So I would absolutely recommend All Quiet on the Western Front. I loved the Wien translation, and I think you would enjoy it as well. Please let me know if you've read it. Come back in a couple weeks and you'll see the next one I'm going to review having to do with World War I. Have a lovely day.